We're joined now by Cory Mose, KVUE's own. Cory, thank you for taking the time today, man.
Oh man, blessed to be here, man. I was just talking to you about this behind the scenes, but yeah, the layout is dope, bro. I mean, I like the graphic. You got a nice little black background behind you. Of course, you got to get the water from
Oh,
Starbucks.
yeah.
Like, it's a whole vibe out here.
It's crazy what happens when you're 2-0. We actually get some stuff around here, man. It's crazy.
Yeah. Hey, and the helmets,
Oh,
man,
yeah. I
mess
love
with
it.
them.
Absolutely love it. Look, obviously, we got you on Arizona State hitting the road for the first time here in the 2024 college football season. And they got Texas State. Kenny Dillingham at his press conference this week said Texas State's the best football team that they'll play up to this point in the season. Said this is a team that could definitely be a Power 4 team and definitely give some of those Big 12 teams a run for their money. Just before we get into personnel and everything that we've seen up to this point about Texas State, do you agree with that? You think Texas State, from what you've seen for the first 2 weeks, could be a Power 4 team?
Oh yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, this is something that has been burning and building for the past 2 years, right? Right when GJ Kinne got here, you could tell there was a different energy here. I was speaking back to last year in week 2 when they played Baylor. They went over to Waco, beat them in their own house, and so that was kind of like the first time people looked around. It's like, wow, Texas State may be something brewing out there in San Marcos. And so you fast forward a year later, a year under GJ Kinne's system, you get a big time recruit like Jordan McCloud, the reigning Sun Belt Player of the Year. And so you bring in all these factors, and you're like, wow, if you look around, they got a little thing going. And so I think that's for sure the energy out here in San Marcos is that Texas State is legit. If they as
Absolutely.
long as they stay healthy, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's always the story in college football, right? It's you got depth and you got to stay healthy at a certain point. For GJ Kinne, for ASU fans that aren't too familiar with the type of coach that he is, how would you kind of evaluate what he's done to this program in such a short period of time?
Yeah, he's definitely a player's coach. And so you see that in his interviews when he talks to the players, like he's a player guy. And he used to be a player himself, quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles back in the day. Just to bring you an example, right? When the NCAA game dropped, he talked to us about how he used to he showed some of his players his old rating in the old NCAAs. And he was like a 95, like he was up there, like a 95, 94. Yeah, he was like that. He was like
Jeez.
that. And so he was like, y'all talking all that mess, but back in the day, I used to be the guy in the game. And so that's the type of stuff though that he does with his players to kind of have them buy in to show his personality. And he's just a guy that wants to win, and he's going to do anything to make that happen. And I think guys and the recruits that you see that are coming in are seeing that, man. He's a genuine dude that has a high powered offense, and wide receivers and quarterbacks love to see that they're going to get their stuff off, because he's throwing the ball 30, 40 times a game. And so, yeah, I think that's something that GJ Kinne is building here, is that energy that they believe that they're great because he believes that he's great as a head coach.
Definitely. You talk about the high powered offense that Kenny likes to run. You mentioned Jordan McCloud, obviously quarterback. He's played college football for some time now, I believe going back to 2019. Just what have you seen from McCloud through the first 2 weeks of the season in terms of what he is right now and how good of a quarterback he can be on Thursday against Arizona State?
Yeah, I think week 1, right, when they played Lamar, it was a close game. It was something that no one really expected. You can say that after the game, they were kind of disappointed in their efforts, it's on both sides of the ball, defense and offense. And I think what McLeod was the command of that offense, right? I think week 1, you kind of saw that he was still kind of learning some things. Of course, being patient with his legs, I feel
Yeah.
like, compared to week 2, where he had a couple rushing touchdowns. He was able to get out the pocket, had some design runs for McLeod in the red zone. And I think that's the difference that you're going to continue to see in the evolution of this offense with McLeod, is that he can run. And so GJ loves to throw it, but he's also learning how to utilize his quarterback a little bit more in all facets of what he can bring to the table. And so I think that's what you're going to see when Arizona State comes to town, is that, man, this dude knows the offense. He has special arm talent. That's why he's a reigning Sun Belt Player of the Year. But when they need him to use his legs, they're going to do it, and he's a weapon in that way.
It's an offense in Texas State that has averaged through 2 weeks about 47 and a half points per game. Obviously, a lot of that is the system that Kenny's got there and then Jordan McCloud. But who are some of the other weapons that Arizona State fans should definitely know heading into Thursday night's matchup?
If you look at that running back room, I mean, you got a dude in Ishmael Mahdi who last year, no one really talks about this, but I think it's a crazy stat. But he led the nation, like not just the conference, but the nation in all purpose yards
Oh, wow.
because he's also a kick returner. And so he catches the ball out the backfield. And it was a big reason why he stayed here. That was a big announcement, I should say, because a lot of people were expecting him to transfer to a Power Five because of all he did last year. But that shows you, right, the culture that GJ Kinne's building, that a guy who led the nation in all purpose yards decided to stay at Texas State. And so that's a guy to look out for. But the other guy in that running back room is Lincoln Perry. He had a really good game last week against UTSA. And he's a guy that's coming off a season ending injury last year. And so a lot of people don't really remember what he was like his sophomore year because it's been 2 years, right? But last week he came back on the scene with a force. And so that running back duo is going to be something to look out for when it comes to can you stop the running game along with Jordan McCloud's legs as well. And I just got to mention one more guy on the outside at wide receiver, Joey Hobart. He's a dog. I don't have much else to say about him, but he's a dog. Number 10, you got to know where number 10 is at all times when he's on the field.
This is an offense in Texas State, and I know there's a lot of people that have talked about it up to this point, haven't really played quote unquote anybody, right? You talk about Lamar, UTSA. Now, don't get me wrong, UTSA, they've had their moments throughout the last couple of seasons, but how is it evaluating this offense going up against defenses like that versus this week? Now you're bringing in a Big 12 defense in Arizona State that's in the upper echelon as it stands through 2 weeks. They handed it to a Mississippi State team that scores at a high rate last week, and then in week 1, just an absolute dominating performance over Wyoming. You mentioned that close game against Lamar early on. What did you see defensively that they did that could give Texas State maybe some fits?
I would say probably the first thing is they were able to get to Jordan McCloud a little bit. I think their pass rush was able to get there. And that was a question when coming to the season. They had 3 offensive linemen still battling, I should say, for the starting position. And so that shows you, right? There isn't really a consistency on that front 5. They're starting to get to that point as they start to make decisions of who the exact starter is. But against Lamar, I mean, that was the problem. Jordan McCloud was under pressure a good amount of time, and so much so they switched quarterbacks and went to the backup RJ Martinez, who's been playing well in camp, and so they want to get him some time. But again, can they have enough time in the pocket? And that's what I'm looking out for against Arizona State. When you got some real dogs in that front 4 for the Sun Devils, and they can get to the quarterback. I know y'all can, and so that's the kind of thing to look out for on Thursday, I should say, right under the lights. Is can they get pressure to Jordan McCloud because other teams of the past have been able to.
Yeah, absolutely. Is this a team that you've seen in Texas State that starts fast, or is this a team that takes a little bit to get into their groove? Because, again, going back to Arizona State's defense, there isn't a Power 4 defense that scored more defensive touchdowns through 2 weeks. They start fast. Second play of the season, they had a pick 6 running the other way. So what have you seen from Texas State in that respect?
Yeah, that's the goal, right? GJ Kinne's offense is, hey, we got to get out to a lead, and then our defense is going to provide pressure because they're really good at rushing the quarterback themselves. I mean, Texas State, they have 3 guys leading the sack numbers in the Sun Belt Conference. And so 3 guys in the top 10, I should say, that are in the sack numbers for the conference. And so they get after it because they're able to get these leads so fast. And so that's always the goal with any type of GJ Kinne offense is start out fast because, one, the offense is fast, right? You want to be able to get a couple big hitters, and you don't want 3 and outs because their possessions are 20 seconds long at that point because they move the ball so fast. And so, that is always the goal when it comes to Texas State offense is get out fast, force the other team to play from behind, make them pass the ball, rush the quarterback. That's a recipe for success for the Bobcats.
Obviously, a lot of talk about that Texas State offense, and rightfully so. Again, a team that's averaging about 47.5 points per game is wild. I don't care what conference you're playing in. This is college football. On the other side of the ball, though, you bring up some of those pass rushers. Who are some names to know for Arizona State fans heading into that matchup?
Yeah, it's actually a local Austin kid. His name's Ben Bell. He plays defensive end. I think he has about 1.5 sacks so far this season out of Cedar Park High School. And man, if you look at him, right, he looks like a Power 5 guy. And so they have a couple of those sprinkled within that defense. Another guy I would say, not on the defensive line to look out for, but in the secondary, Joshua Eaton. He's a transfer from Oklahoma. He's been in Texas State for a couple years now. And so another D1 talent, right? That's now coming into his own. He's becoming a leader on that defensive side. I know after the game this past week against UTSA, we asked him about how, against Lamar, y'all gave up 27 points, but against UTSA, you only gave up 10. Like, what was the difference? And he kind of straight up said, like, we had to take things seriously, and we
Mhm.
had to take a look in the mirror and be like, that's not who we were in week one. Week two is who we actually want to be every single week. And so they take pride defensively in stopping teams now and not just letting the offense put up 50 points and make it a shootout. They want to be able to hold up their side of the bargain too. And so that secondary and Josh Eden married with the pass rush from a Ben Bell, it's been a recipe that's been cooking up some good things. And I think that's what they're going to try to continue to do on Thursday against Arizona State.
This is a team in Arizona State that nationally, really over the last few days, people have started to take notice. Of course, number 4, Cam Scatterbo, we got him behind us. Obviously, National AP Player of the Week, Big 12 Offensive Player of the Week, nearly eclipsed 300 all-purpose yards last week, rushed for over 260. How do you anticipate that matchup going between the Arizona State offensive line and Scat versus that Texas State front seven?
I think that's the key to Texas State's ability to stop Arizona State's offense, right? Can you stop the run? And that's a question that hasn't really gotten tested yet when it comes to this Bobcat defense, because like you mentioned, I mean, the last two contests, they've been mediocre opponents, I would say. UTSA, it is a rivalry game. I will say that, though. They haven't beaten UTSA for the past 5 or 6 years. And so that
Mhm.
was a big time win for them. But even against Lamar, right? You're supposed to be Lamar, you're 30-point favorites, and you only won by 7. And so, yeah, that run defense hasn't really been tested to this level. And so I think that's kind of the question that I don't have answers for, because we haven't really seen them be tested in that way. And so this is going to be the first matchup where we'll get to see if that Texas State defense can like bunker down, right, and put
Yeah.
hats on the ball and rally tackle, because that's what we're going to need to do against Arizona State.
I feel like there's always a little bit of concern when you have an offensive-minded coach, and Arizona State has a similar approach with Kenny Dillingham, obviously former offensive coordinator, Oregon, Florida State, et cetera, where you've got such an offensive-minded coach that maybe the defense takes a little bit of a hit because you're going to have to bring in somebody that just absolutely knows what they're doing on the defensive side of the ball. Have you seen that at all through the first couple games, through fall camp at all, that maybe the defense is just a few bars below what Texas State has offensively?
I think that's kind of tough to gauge just because of GJ Kinney's offense is
Yeah.
so fast, right? So now you're talking about if you do get a 3 and out, it was just 20 seconds off the board, and now your defense is back out there, and
Yeah.
so a lot of GJ Kinney's defenses over the past have to play defense a lot more
Yeah.
than other schools around the conferences because the offense is so fluid, right? And so you're talking about dudes getting gassed, especially on a team that doesn't have a lot of depth like you see the Power Five teams do, right? That's the point of well, I guess I should say that's the difference between a Power Five school and some other schools that
Yeah.
aren't Power Five. And so the depth always plays a factor when you get guys gas when the fourth quarter comes around, because the defense has been out there for 80 snaps or 85 snaps. It takes a toll on a lot of people. And so I think that's another thing to look out for on Thursday, is that can the Texas State defense hold up stamina wise and conditioning wise for all these plays that they're going to have to do? Because I do think it's going to be a shootout. I mean, I don't think it's going to be a slobber knocker or a slugfest. I think it's going to be an air raid all over the place Thursday night. And so whose defense is going to bend but not break? That's going to be the question.
Yeah, definitely. Last couple questions that will get you out of here, Cory. Obviously, a lot's been made of what Arizona State does on the ground through the first couple weeks of the season. Not a lot of people have seen what Sam Levitt can do at quarterback for the Sun Devils. Definitely a dual threat guy. And then outside at wide receiver, a lot of guys with a lot of talent. But again, being a run first team, there haven't been a lot of secondaries thus far that have really seen these guys or been tested by a Jordan Tyson, a Malik McClain, a Jake Smith. Where do you feel like that Texas State secondary is at through 2 weeks?
I think they're pretty solid, right? I think it's something that I mentioned earlier about how Joshua Eaton now they're taking pride in what they're doing in that secondary. And now they're communicating better. Of course, another year underneath the same defensive scheme. So that also helps out as well when it comes to communication. And so I think they're at a good point, especially coming off a rivalry game where they've proven that, man, we can stop the run and the pass, against a UTSA squad. But that's what they believe right now. And so I think a lot of that is confidence when it comes to the secondary. After Lamar, there wasn't a lot of confidence. It's like, but we just got torched by the Cardinals with 27 points. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But after the Roadrunners, they now built that confidence up a little bit. They understand that they can have success in that secondary. And so coming into this game, I think it's on the up and up. But like you mentioned, there's not a lot of tape out there with Levitt, right? There's not a lot of people that's seen a lot of things that they can do offensively through the air. They know they can run the ball, but what can they do with the wide receivers? Heck, I know what they can do through the air because the NCAA. I've been torched a couple times in Arizona State. And so I know Levitt's a dog. But like you mentioned, though, it's not shown on tape yet. And so, I think Texas State's secondary is confident, but I'm also intrigued with what I can see with my own eyes in reality and not over a video game with Levitt.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Look, battle of two undefeated teams heading into week 3, Arizona State, first road game of the season, obviously expecting a big crowd from Texas State. How do you see this one going down on Thursday?
Man, it's going to be interesting, right? Because I think it all goes down and it all depends on third down. I think, let me get the math right. Texas State over the last 2 games, they're 11 for 26, below 50% when it comes to third down conversions. And in a game like this, where you need to score a lot of points, that's what I'm assuming, you need to make critical third downs. And so that's the stat. Of course, the run defense, of course, can they hold up against the pass as well? But another stat I'm looking at is that third down efficiency. Which team is going to be able to convert on those third downs? And from right now, what we've seen from Texas State, they're not really good at that part of situational football. And so Arizona State, on the other hand, I know y'all have had some success in that area. And so, I think it's going to be a shootout. I think it's going to take a couple big-time stops in the red zone and on third down. And I'm interested, right? I'm interested to see what's going to happen. I'm not going to give any predictions because I'm not a big prediction guy. But I do think that like the atmosphere at San Marcos is going to be crazy. Just like it was last week against UTSA. And so will that play a factor, right? First road game for Arizona State. It's going to be loud in San Marcos. And so I'm interested to see how that offense is able to handle things as well in a hostile environment.
It should definitely be a good one. The man, the myth, the Mose, KVUE's own Cory Mose. Give him a follow on social at Cory_Mose. Cory, we appreciate you taking the time today, man.
Man, I appreciate you for asking me to come out anytime, bro. Anytime. I like the vibes out there.
Always, man. Always.
We all silly like the mayor.